punishments on Muammar al-Gaddafi and his inner circle. Well, that move has been welcomed by Libya's Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations.
The Tripoli regime has no longer any credibility. It goes without saying that this resolution represents moral support for our people who are resisting.
Well, David Mack is a former U.S. ambassador to the United Arab Emirates and joins us now from Washington. They seem to have found, Ambassador, some sort of balance there between the more direct measures, no-fly zones that some were hoping for, and at the same time coming up, though, with a very strong message. Is it the right balance, though?
Well, Sammy, what we've just seen from New York is an illustration of what President Obama said on Wednesday and Secretary Clinton repeated today. This is not an issue between President Obama and Muammar Gaddafi. It's an issue in the first instance between the Libyan people and Gaddafi, and it is incumbent upon the international community as a whole to support the Libyan people in demanding their freedom. And what the U.S. can do is to exercise leadership in getting the international community coordinated, and that will be effective action. We are not going to let this be a replay of what happened in Iraq or what we tried to do with Libya in the 1980s when we used unilateral measures and they totally failed.
The U.S. is, though, now taking a much stronger line by asking Gaddafi to stand down, something we didn't see it do, did we, in Egypt and Tunisia? What's prompted that?
Well, first of all, talk is cheap when you're the Washington Post editorial board or a number of different governments around the world. But when the President of the United States makes a strong statement, it's about 24 hours of maybe warm feelings for some people, and then people start asking, what are you going to do about it? So President Obama has quite wisely resisted turning this into a feud between him and Muammar Gaddafi, and he has been escalating his rhetoric very gradually, while at the same time getting international organizations, the United Nations, the Arab League, the African Union, the Organization of the International Islamic Conference, getting all these organizations together, putting pressure on Libya so it becomes absolutely clear to the people around Gaddafi that he's going down and they should not want to go down with him. They should separate themselves from him. And what we saw with the deputy Libyan ambassador at the UN is that there is a lot more to the Libyan government than one man.
Do you think the U.S. will now perhaps throw some of its weight, at least, behind the rival administration that's being set up by the former Libyan justice minister?
Well, that's an excellent question. There's two questions that we as diplomats ask when we're dealing with a new government. And when I was a U.S. diplomat and the interpreter for our ambassador in Libya in 1969, when Gaddafi came to power, these are the questions we asked. One, do you actually control the territory you claim to represent? And two, will you keep and maintain your obligations, your international obligations? And if a government can do those two things, control the territory they claim to represent and keep their international obligations, those are the only two tests that are really important for us to decide whether we deal with that government.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much, Ambassador David Mack.
You're welcome.
Al Jazeera's Hood Abdelhamid is in eastern Libya and has been updating us on events happening inside the North African country.
Praying to God for help in surviving an intense battle in Zawiya, 50 kilometers west of the capital Tripoli. Gaddafi is the enemy of God, this protester cries out. Seconds later, the gunfire gets much closer. This video was sent to AlJazeera after being filmed on Saturday morning. Zawiya is a strategic town with an oil terminal where opposition forces are gathering to drive Muammar Gaddafi from his last remaining strongholds.
Now there's only Tripoli and a few other towns left. That's why I urge the Libyan people that there's no going back. Going back's impossible. We have to move forward. All the patriotic, courageous and respected Libyan youth should help the people of Tripoli to carry out their duties.
Much of eastern Libya is already in opposition control. But these images, set to be filmed on Friday, show massive protests in Misurata, another western city 210 kilometers from the capital. Al Jazeera cannot independently verify this video or another said to be from Misurata that appears to show more soldiers joining the protesters' cause. Libya's head of special forces, the latest Gaddafi ally, now rallying for his removal.
I place all my expertise and capabilities at the service of the youth revolution. I urge all honest members of the special forces to rejoin their units immediately and to protect the gains of the February 17th revolution and protect the lives of the Libyan people and their property.
And this video shows exactly why Libyans need protecting. Heavily armed men drag away a limp body and stuff it into a car. Uploaded on YouTube, it also can't be verified, but is said to be filmed in Tripoli during Friday's clashes. Painting a different picture, these images, shot by Associated Press on a government-sponsored media offensive under the restrictions of Gaddafi loyalists.
Tripoli is 100% safe. There are no problems. People are going about their business. There are no problems and people are going to work.
It would seem this vision is about as useful as state television to show what's really happening in Libya, or just how much longer its under-siege leader can hang on. Most of the oil-rich East has fallen into the hands of the opposition. There is a sense of security, but it's a volatile situation. The opposition also says it has taken control of oil refineries, now operating at a minimal capacity. For people here, the most important is to retain the gains, keep the momentum, while they wait and see what happens in the west of the country. Hud Abdul Hamid, Al Jazeera, Eastern Libya.
Well, we'll be inside Benghazi to find out how people there are already celebrating what they believe is a new era. That's coming up after this break. Stay with us.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Rhythms of resistance.
A part of the struggle and popular resistance is art. Through my art, I resist. Resistance is my art, and my art is my war.
Musicians using music as a way to maintain their cultural identity.
I believe that when I sing to the world, I portray Palestine through my voice, my singing, and my songs.
Songs from the lost homeland. At this time, on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. Let's recap our top story here, dominated by Libya and what's going on there. The UN Security Council votes unanimously to adopt biting sanctions against Libya's government.
When atrocities are committed against innocents, the international community must speak with one voice. And today, it has. Tonight,
earlier there, tough words from the US president, who says Muammar Gaddafi has lost the backing of his people and must step down. And protesters have taken control of most of eastern Libya and are closing in on the capital Tripoli. Tony Bertley reports from the eastern city of Benghazi.
More than 40 years of iron-fisted rule virtually over, and Libya's second city, Benghazi, is still celebrating. The old and the young taking to the streets to embrace a new era.
This is feeling I had never, ever been felt before.
It's liberation, but at a price. People here say that more than 750 were killed in the uprising, over 1,000 wounded. This is the coffin of 64-year-old Saad Zoué, a bus driver shot dead by Gaddafi loyalists, a simple man who wanted something many take for granted, freedom and democracy.
He was only a driver. He had nothing to do with Gaddafi.
His anger is shared by millions who are now finally able to speak out about the oppression and brutality of their leader.
All the people, they used to work with Gaddafi, they're out. We need them out. We need a new system.
To cheers and rapturous applause, a pre-Gaddafi Libyan flag was unrolled on a government building in the centre of Benghazi. Gaddafi may still be in power, but here they feel their suffering at his hands is almost over.
There is a tremendous sense of jubilation here, a tremendous sense of freedom and liberation. It's an electric atmosphere, you can feel it all around. But there is a small note of apprehension. Gaddafi's elite brigades and his mercenaries are about 400 kilometres from here. That's just over a 3-hour drive. And the Libyan leader is showing no signs of going just yet.
The uprising was aimed against the state apparatus. Police buildings were burned and the heavy weapons used as the arm of oppression have been turned into souvenir props.
Libya, Libya!
Above it all, they shout Libya, at peace with their beloved country, but at war with their leader. And all eyes are now on Tripoli. With most of eastern Libya in the hands of the opposition, the momentum is growing and forces are now building for an assault against the remaining Gaddafi strongholds. In Benghazi, they no longer say good morning, they say instead new beginning. For them, it has begun. For the capital and a few other towns, they'll have to wait for just a little while longer. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Benghazi, Libya.
Well, Khalid Mutawa is a Libyan poet and professor at the University of Michigan. He joins me now from there. Thanks so much for joining us. As we saw in the report there by Tony Bertley, people out on the streets, scenes that you would not have thought would be possible in a place like Libya a few months ago. There is something of a cultural evolution that has taken place in Libyan society, isn't there?
There is, and it's a long time coming. You know, we saw how much blood and lives were lost in the past few days. But that's just an indication of how vicious the Gaddafi regime has been. But the lives that were lost recently were really a culmination of many lives, most specifically